I'm Greg Powell, and this is Investors Insights.
You're listening to Investors Insights with Greg Powell, Certified Investment Management Analyst and President and CEO of Thought Plan Partners.
Rolling in 3, 2.
It is my pleasure to introduce you to our guest speaker today, the President of the Alabama Public Service Commission, Twinkle Cavanaugh. President Cavanaugh brings to the Public Service Commission a diverse background in public service, conservative policymaking, and small business. Having owned several businesses, small businesses I might add, she understands the challenges facing small businesses and Alabama families. During her term in office, she has achieved many accomplishments, which include promoting business incentives that help small businesses thrive and encourage the development of new businesses throughout Alabama. This is why I wanted to have her on Investors Insights today. So with that, welcome President Twinkle Cavanaugh.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. You have a beautiful building and a great group of people working here.
Well, thank you. Well, we're honored with your busy schedule. It's an honor to have you here and just appreciate all that you have done. You have there's a list I could go through of accomplishments as well as things on the horizon that you're debating today and representing Alabama for. And as a small business owner, I greatly appreciate that. And plus we have a lot of small business owners as clients.
Well, what I understand is that the heartbeat of our state happens to be not just the people of Alabama, but the people like you who create jobs for the people who live here in Alabama. Oh. And so small businesses are the heartbeat. Now, of course, we want the large industry in the state.
Sure.
Because mamas and daddies want good jobs.
Yeah, you're right.
And I know you know probably better than anybody, but when I ran, you have to have a slogan when you're running. And
yes.
My slogan was jobs, jobs, jobs.
Right.
Because I ran for the President of the Public Service Commission because I knew that the Alabama Public Service Commission could be an economic engine for the state of Alabama. Now, I know that government never creates a job. That is using your money to pay someone to do a task.
Right.
However, we can create a friendly environment for businesses to grow and thrive in our state. And so when I ran, I made that commitment to the people of Alabama, that we would run a conservative operation at the Public Service Commission under my presidency, and we would always look at how does this affect the mamas and daddies across our state and the ability to grow jobs in the state of Alabama.
Right. Well, you've lived up to that commitment, and we thank you for that. Now, I've got some questions for you that I would like to just brainstorm here with you. In terms of challenges that are facing Alabama small businesses, what do you think are some of the greatest challenges that they're up against these days?
Well, there's so many, and it depends on what venue you are in as to what challenges might be facing you.
Right.
And just a little bit of background about myself.
Sure.
My brother and I owned a restaurant, a stakeout restaurant. It's a chain, and we've sold that. I no longer own that restaurant, but I've made a payroll. I have ordered all the things. I've done the P&L statements. I've done all the things you do when you own a small business.
Right.
I've hired, and yes, I have had to fire a few. That was not fun, but
sure.
But that's what it means to run a business. My husband is a local veterinarian, and so we have a small vet clinic our family owns, and in Montgomery. And so we are constantly looking at what is affecting his business. And one of the things that I see is that government needs to get out of the way for small businesses.
True.
And what can we do at the Public Service Commission is always my question. What can we do to get out of the way or to help with some of the cost of running a small business? And one of the costs is definitely going to be your utilities.
Yes,
whether or not,
talk about that.
Right,
Yeah.
whether or not it's electricity or gas, or in some cases we regulate water or wastewater, not in all cases, and
Right.
we do not regulate the Birmingham Water Works nor the Birmingham Sewer Board, but there are many places we do regulate things like that. And what I said as president is that I wanted to come in and make sure that we do things in a transparent and a fair manner, but that we look at in public hearings each of the major companies we regulate.
Yeah.
And the first year as president, we went through the three most major companies that we regulate, and that's Alabama Power Company, Mobile Gas Company, and Alabama Gas Company. Because when a small business is looking at the bottom line, it always includes their utility bills.
Right. Very
And
much so. Oh, it plays a key role. Yes.
You got
Got
it.
to keep the lights on.
You
Yeah,
got it,
yeah.
and all the computers running,
yes.
and everything, the air and the heat.
That's
so
exactly right.
what we did was we looked with a fine-tooth comb at each area of the business, because we don't necessarily want the absolute least price, because then it may not be a reliable source.
Right.
And the reality is, I know from owning a restaurant, a day without power is a day without any profit.
That's exactly right.
Because you can't even cover your cost, and you've got to send your employees home for the day.
Right.
And you don't know when it might come back on.
Sure.
So that's also something that we look at. We look at the bottom line, the cost, and we
Right.
also look at the reliability. I'm proud to say that we, with those three companies, have three of the most reliable companies in the United States.
I
And
agree with that.
It's hard to compare yourself outside of the United States. Many places do not have the reliability that we have. But one of the things I looked at in a tough economic downturn of the economy, tough economic times for
Right.
families and businesses, what I wanted to do is look and see, could we trim the amount we allow them to earn? And we did on all three companies.
Okay.
And with all three companies, it was the first time that they had been trimmed. And with Mobile Gas, we were only talking, their set amount was set in the 90s. But when you're
True.
talking about Alabama Power Company, it was first set in the 80s.
Yes.
And as you can remember, times were a lot different under Jimmy Carter in the
Yes.
in the
Oh,
70s
yeah.
and 80s.
Remember that
and
well.
So what you have to look at is where we are today and what makes sense to make sure that these companies offer a reliable source to small businesses, to large industry, and to families.
Right.
But then also, what is it, the least amount that they can earn and still be a good company? Because you've got to look at all factions. Because what I have learned is if you can cut the cost, the fixed cost that industry and businesses have, then they can grow their business, expand
Oh, they
their
can.
business,
Sure.
and more jobs. And that's what that means. And like I said, my slogan is, let's keep Alabama working. Jobs, jobs, jobs.
Right. Well, and it's really interesting that you're bringing that up, because one of the things we talk about here at Five Plan Partners in the early 1900s, it was electricity that really changed us from going from an agrarian age to an industrial age. And here we are now in the information age. And, if you really study it, there would be those people that would say, well, it has to do with technology in terms of the cell phone and the laptop and the iPads and those kind of things. But the reality of it is, without that electricity, without that energy sources that we have, we wouldn't have those things. People forget that 90% of all the internet companies and 90% of all the software companies in the world are here in the United States. And one of those reasons is exactly what you talked about. They're creating jobs, but in addition to that, it's because of the utilities and the cost of the power that they need to operate. So thank you on what you're saying there. Let me ask you this question. What are the key pieces of legislation that business owners should pay particular attention to right now that could impact their business?
Well, most of the legislation that we deal with is on a federal level at the
Right.
Public Service
Sure.
Commission. Now, I will say there are a few that we have through the Alabama legislature, things like pipeline safety, gas pipeline safety. We're in charge of all the inspections across the state for gas pipelines to ensure that we don't have explosions that hurt people and could even kill them. So that's our job, and we take that very seriously. And so one of the bills that's in the legislature this time and was in this past year before they ended the session, it did not finish, it went through one house and not the other, and that is a pipeline safety bill, and increasing the fines, because we need to make sure people understand that if they aren't doing things safely, that there is a consequence.
Sure.
And so that's more of what we do on a state level when it comes to legislation. But on the federal level, the legislation is really right now strangling us here in Alabama. In fact, one of the
Talk a little bit about that, yeah.
and I say legislation, what's happening now is that the current administration in Washington under President Obama is allowing the EPA to really run roughshod over all of us here in the state of Alabama.
It's more regulation instead of legislation.
Absolutely.
Is that a fair statement? What in terms of business owners like myself, what can we do to help in that fight?
Be very vigilant to see what's happening and to call your member of Congress, but not just your member of Congress, because I know so many of your small business owners and so many people that invest in, that are from Alabama. They look at a national level. Right now, the elections are coming up, and you've got a Senate on the line, and if those things have to come through the Senate, and we are protected from a rogue EPA,
right,
then we're going to be a lot better off in Alabama. And let me explain that, because right now President Obama has declared war on coal. He's made no bones about it. He has said from his own lips, I've declared war on coal. And a war on coal is very harmful to us here in Alabama, because just 10 years ago, 60% of the electricity generated in the state of Alabama was generated using coal. This next year, it will be somewhere short of 40%, somewhere around the 40% mark. It could go up as high as 45, and it could go as low as 35, because you bring on your power plants as the need or as it is required.
Right, sure.
Obviously, a really warm day requires more of the plants to run, and a really cold day requires a lot of power plants to run.
Yeah.
But when you take coal out of the mix, you drive up the cost. And in fact, President Obama has made no bones about it. He said it will cause prices to increase for the citizens of this country. Well, in some areas, it will not affect them as greatly as it will here in Alabama.
Yeah.
But it is a major concern to us here in Alabama. I recently went to Atlanta for a public hearing of the EPA to speak on behalf of the state of Alabama.
Right.
And as I said, I understand that the president is concerned about bringing in green energy, but right now the people of Alabama are more concerned about the greens that are in their wallet,
sure,
and they want to keep them there.
Right,
they want the ability to have a good paying job. They want the ability to be able to turn on the lights at home and have everything working, and yet have a little extra money in their pocket to do things for their families.
Right.
And that's the fight we've had at the Public Service Commission. Just so your viewers will know, one of the biggest elements that really took us on during our hearings, and it was not to lower the price that consumers in Alabama pay for gas nor electricity. It was all about doing away with coal. What they wanted to do was to be able to get their hands on the mix that each company uses, and then be able to use that to actually put them out of business when it comes to coal. Now, I'll use Alabama Power Company as an example. They're not going to go out of business. They're going to keep producing power.
Right.
But when their price goes up to produce that power, then the consumer's prices will go
also,
up.
Very much so.
And it will cost more to run small businesses, and we will not have the competitive advantage we have right now for bringing industry in.
That's true.
We've gotten Mercedes and Hyundai and all of these great, ThyssenKrupp, and I know they've changed their name now, but a lot of the steel plants and all. We have gotten these jobs in the state of Alabama because of our low price of energy and electricity here.
Right.
We've got to keep that competitive advantage, and we cannot allow President Obama to basically not allow the House and Senate to vote on it, but just to shove it down our throats through regulation mandated at the EPA.
It needs to be a discussion.
You got it.
Very much so.
Yes, very much so.
Well, I can't thank you enough. That's great information. And also, for those of you watching, understand now, well, I think she does a fantastic job, and at the same time, you know, the insight that President Kavanaugh brings on what's actually taking place behind the scenes from our daily lives is huge, and we can't thank you enough.
Thank you, and thank you for what you do.
Oh, very much so. So thanks for joining us, and hopefully you've gotten great information from this, and I look forward to having continuing discussions with you. Thanks again.
More information at fiplanpartners.com. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC.